It was tough. It's been like a year and a half in the making, cutting the hardscape. It's been a roller coaster of emotions because when you do the hardscape and the pool, that's your baby.
Yeah.
Like that's your, I can post the picture of that and say that was us.
Yeah.
And I have a good friend of mine, he also installs pools in northern Columbus, and I'd send him a picture and he'd say, well, isn't that a feather in your cap? Because I would make jobs, the design's crazy and out of this world, and we were charging for it, but it didn't really set in until like this year what he actually meant by that. I was myself to add that feather to the cap versus saying if I'm going to continue down this road, I need to hire a crew that specializes in that side of the company. You know, we were running 3 guys doing $200,000 plus projects, 12, 14-hour days. It was a feather in the cap thing, and you know, I had to swallow my pride and say this model just doesn't work for the way I want to operate.
Right.
And that's tough. I mean, that was really tough.
Welcome back to another episode of the Cost of Doing Business Show, guys. I'm out here in Central Ohio with Steve Kidwell at Prime Outdoor. It's the first time I've actually met you, although you did get the chance to meet the Tusky guys this past winter.
Yep.
So I got here at like 7:30 or whatever, or no, 8. It was like 8 o'clock. And it's 11 o'clock now. We've been nonstop talking with the guys and everything ever since.
Yep.
But I brought Chase with me, my 7-year-old son. School starts in a couple of weeks, so I'm like, you know what? While I have a chance, I'm going to bring him along and make some memories. I remember going with my dad when I was his age, and so yeah. But anyway, thanks for making time in your day and your schedule for me. And I know running a business, you got your mind geared towards production, and taking a deep breath and taking a pause sometimes is hard to do. So appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, and we like we've kind of talked about, you know, there's more to life.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you got to step back.
Yeah.
So.
Well, for the sake of everybody listening in, like, introduce yourself, give me a picture of like yourself, your team, how you got started, what you're doing now, what your vision is.
Yeah, so I'm Steve. We're here located just east of Columbus, Central Ohio, and you know, right now we're primarily a pool installation company. We've done a lot of hardscape projects, you know, some pretty large scale hardscape projects for the size of our company. We run lean, we run equipment based, you know, and you know, that seems to work out great for us. But you know, 12 years ago I was mowing grass. So, you know, 1-man crew mowing grass, and then phased into hardscaping. 5 years ago, phased into pools. You know, keeping that small company feel has been kind of the main driving factor for us.
What was the most guys you ever had?
The most guys I ever had has been 4.
Okay.
So we, a couple years ago, dabbled in multiple subs. Didn't work out. You know, one thing to be super aware of when you run on a quality base versus a quantity base is once you start subbing things and they're not turning out to your expectations, well, now what was supposed to save you time and money is costing you time and money. And I think, you know, and everyone's different. Everyone has different standards. I mean, I'm sure there's guys that could go to my jobs and pick them apart, and I could go to other jobs and pick them apart. But when it comes down to the bottom line, you got to do what's best for you. And what we decided was best for us is just staying lean and mean, and you know, being able to provide a level of customer service to our clients, to our expectations, not to anyone else's expectations, not to what the guy down the road. I don't worry about my competition. I don't worry about any of that stuff. We do what we think is best for us, and we're not always right. And that's what's worked out best to this point. You know, changing scales, going from, you know, a mowing company, doing a lot of large scale mowing projects to a lot of large scale landscape projects to large scale hardscape projects, it's been a lot of pivoting. It's been a lot of adjustment and weaving through and making, you know, decisions, again, that weren't always the right ones. But I think, you know, you do your research, you talk to the right people, and you go where you want to go. You know, you can't chase the dollar. You do what you want to do every day. You know, tomorrow's never promised, and you know, up to this point, 12 years in, That's what we've done. That's what's got us here.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it takes a while to figure that out. Like if you're brand new starting out, and somebody's telling you, what's your vision, what's your mission? It feels kind of intangible. Like I don't know how to articulate. I don't know. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But you get a couple years under your belt, you get a decade under your belt, it starts crystallizing for you, and like you said, the highest dollar isn't always what you're optimizing for, at least. And everybody has a different take on this. It's not like there's one way to look at this, but just from the conversations we've already had this morning, I think we agree. Like it's more about quality of life, having the freedom to live life and not feel like you're a slave to the business. I mean, that's all huge stuff.
Yeah, and I think years back, and there's a book on it that I probably should have read. I actually think it was Jason from Earth, Turf, and Wood. I think he said it once. I think I read it back in the days of like Lawn Site, the forum Lawn Site, back when I was starting my company. And it was if something happens to you today and your business wouldn't continue tomorrow without you, you don't own a business. Your business owns you.
It's 100% true.
That's always been an eye-opener for me. But in regard to that, the business that's going to run itself without you doesn't come overnight.
No.
That doesn't come overnight.
No. In fact, it's easier to build a business, to own a job, let's say, a business where it has to have you to run, because building the system, building the team and the systems and processes so that the team knows how to do their job well is a whole lot harder than you just doing the work yourself.
Right. And failure, like the level of failure, my wife, God bless her, wouldn't be here in the situation I'm in without her. Doesn't like trying new things. Doesn't like failing 9 times out of 10, but still going after, that 11th. That's not her personality.
Yeah.
So I think it takes a special person to do those things. But again, my wife's a nurse. I couldn't do her job.
Yeah. Right.
I could never do what she does and deal with the things she does deal with on a daily basis. And so, I think when you go into it, reading these books or seeing things online about pure success, I think you really have to keep yourself reined in to, and we've talked about it all morning, to like reality. Like, this is reality.
Yeah. Or even just asking yourself, what are my strengths?
Yeah.
Like, how do I, am I cut out to be the business owner? Am I better cut out to be an excellent number 2 guy that's also financially successful, but I'm not the entrepreneur, I'm the intrapreneur, if you will?
Yep.
Because there's those different personalities out there, and there's nothing wrong. Like the world needs every type of them. So, I agree with what you're saying. Like when you're reading these books or listening to these videos on YouTube or whatever it is, try to remember to view them through the prism or through the lens of, okay, but how does this relate to who I'm cut out to be?
Yep.
And who I show up as my best version of myself.
You got to play devil's advocate, pros and cons. There are a lot of things in these industries, in this world, and it's not just in business, it's in life. All the shiny things, that's not always the best route to go. So you always have to play that devil's advocate with yourself, whether it's mowing, landscaping, hardscaping, water features, pools, whatever industry you're in. You got to have a passion for it. You got to believe in it. And you got to understand that failure is the biggest part of success. And I think that, it's something that is overlooked a lot with the younger guys. That would be my advice to younger people getting into wanting to start a company, wanting to take it to the next level, is, keep yourself grounded. Keep yourself grounded because it can sneak up on you quick.
Yeah.
And if you're not happy with what you're doing, even if you're making all the money in the world, it's not going to matter.
Yeah, it's not worth it. We get one crack at life.
Yeah. Your family matters. Your kids, your moms, your dads. That's what matters in the real scheme of things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What? So you pivoted, from mowing to landscaping to hardscaping now to pools. Do you feel like you're getting closer and closer to the center with every pivot, or do you feel like, hey, it could happen again?
Yeah, I think now where we're at with the pool side of things, with the construction side of that business, that's really where I enjoy being and my main guys enjoy being. And that's a huge factor to take into consideration too.
Absolutely.
Is if you have a really good guy like myself right now who may not enjoy one caveat of business, but there's another branch that you can kind of push him into, let him manage, let him take over, that's amazing, because you keep your premier guys happy, you keep them moving along, you keep them growing, you keep them doing more things. But as far as myself, now, and I've had this conversation before, if somebody knocks on the door and wants to buy the whole thing, for the right amount of money, that's something that you always have to keep in mind. I think the older I get, the more I take that into consideration of what is the end goal. Obviously being in my 30s, I've got a while to weigh all that out. But I still wake up every day and want to do what I'm doing now.
That's a blessed position to be in, But I think you like your question's a good one, because like everybody has an exit strategy whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
And an exit strategy is, or not having a plan at all is an exit strategy of, well, I exit when I die.
Yeah.
Or I exit when I quit working.
Yep.
That's an exit strategy.
Yep.
So whether you have considered it for 2 seconds or not, you have one.
Yep.
And not to get this all into weird stuff on the podcast,
Yeah.
but like that stuff matters when you start thinking about how you structure the business or your taxes and all of that. Like you want to be thinking about that long before that day comes.
Yeah, I mean, all the way down to purchasing a building, like we did. The location of that building, what's that location look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Is it worth paying a little more so that end game is a little more blueprinted out? If the business doesn't sell, what does it look like for a rental income for that building? What does it look like for a recurring income? Because, death, getting old, things like that, that's a guarantee. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that, probably the best thing I ever did through all of the categories I've ever been in is I've been attracted to talking to older guys, conversations with older business owners, things like that. I've never really been surrounded with people my age. Like my circle, my guys who I get information from have always been guys who've been there, done it. And I've always said, I like being the dumbest guy in the room. Like, if you're the smartest guy in the room, and I know there's all kinds of quotes and sayings and stuff like that out there, but if you're the smartest guy in the room, you need a new circle, because you're not going to grow from that. So that's just kind of how I've always operated. Simple, clean, pay your taxes. I
gotta tell you, I like your model. It's from me looking in on it for a few hours. It's pretty sweet. Like I was telling you earlier, with the size of team you have, the quality of guys you have, the revenue you're cranking out, the jobs you're being very selective with your jobs. I mean, a lot of people fight and claw to get anywhere as close to what you've achieved, and I say that to commend you. Like you've really done a good job, and you should be proud of it. Yeah,
and we appreciate it, and it's one of those where not many companies are going to cut their, essentially like I did, cut their revenue 30%. Or be willing to cut their gross sales 30% and be happier. That's a hard thing to do, because I still remember when I started my company, at the end of the year I want X amount of dollars. Second year I want X amount of dollars. You set goals, you set standards, they never align with what your young brain thinks they will. But I think that as long as you are accomplishing your goals in life and in business, like, what more can you ask for? And you can't always get caught up on that last number. Like we talked about with SynkedUP is, it has probably allowed me to drop that total revenue, but make more margin.
So you're saying it helped you find your sweet spot?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I guess because of it, you knew where you could drop your revenue, raise your profit, do less work, and be less pressured.
Yeah. And essentially what it actually, I ran it under, I don't know if I want to call it false pretenses for a year. Like I knew my total sales, but I wasn't really monitoring how much was going in, how much was coming out until the end of the year when or the quarterly meetings with an accountant, stuff like that. So I mean, I had a rough idea where I was, but when I realized, when I really implement this the way it was built to be implemented, and like we talked about earlier, sales declined this last fall into winter. And when it forced me to sit down and go, okay, where do we need to be? Where do we have to be?
What's your floor?
Yeah, it opened up my eyes to, so I'm not spending, I may have guessed that job at 120 hours. Well, now instead of guessing that job at 120 hours, I know it's going to take me 92. Mm-hmm. So, I actually thought I was spending more money than, which is like we talked about, is the opposite of what a lot of companies run into. I thought I was spending more than I actually was, which what that does for you is go, okay, if I want to alleviate the schedule a little bit, not only for my sake, my family's sake, but for my guys' sake and their family's sake, I can afford to. I can afford to not sell 25, 30 pools a year and still maintain the lifestyle that we live, still grow some, purchase the equipment we need.
So essentially you're saying like, just because you could sell 30 pools a year, you didn't necessarily mean you wanted to.
Right. It went more from me from a quantity, like, okay, I have to sell this many pools to, like, where does that sales number need to be?
Actually, I don't have to, yeah.
Yeah, where does that sales number need to be? Because, we've got 6 or 8 more that we're kind of quoting out for late fall, early winter installs. And, I told the guys just yesterday, probably 6 of them, probably 3 to 6 of them, I'm probably just going to say, hey, we'll get you in the spring, because I don't want to burn the candle at both ends. Yeah. And it's just.
Well, talk to me about your decision to cut doing most hardscapes and just being exclusively pools.
Yeah, and so it was tough. It's been like a year and a half in the making.
Okay.
Cutting the hardscape. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, because when you, kind of like with you with water features, when you do the hardscape and the pool, that's your baby.
Yeah.
Like that's your.
It's the turnkey.
I can post the picture of that and say that was us.
Yeah.
End of story. That was all us. We designed it. We built it. And I have a good friend of mine who he also installs pools in northern Columbus, and it used to make me mad, but he would say things like, I'd send him a picture and he'd say, well, isn't that a feather in your cap? And it's like, because I would make jobs, the design's crazy and out of this world, and we were charging for it, but it didn't really set in until like this year of what he actually meant by that. It's like, I was myself to add that feather to the cap of like, versus saying, if I'm going to continue down this road, I need to hire a crew that specializes in that side of the company. We were running 3 guys doing $200,000 plus projects, 12, 14-hour days. Never worked weekends. We've always been stern on not working weekends. But it was a feather in the cap thing, and I had to swallow my pride and say, this model just doesn't work for the way I want to operate.
Right.
And that's tough. I mean, that was really tough. And to be 100% honest, I'm going to have to sell the equipment that allows us to do the hardscaping the way we do, the roller compactors, all that stuff that we have dedicated to that side of the business, or we'll continue doing it. And luckily, we've found 3 high-end subcontractors that they're shoving us some pool work. We're able to give them the hardscape work, so it's worked out at this point.
I've seen that model before in water feature contractors, where they get super niche and say, we only do water features, which then opens up the door for them to do exactly what you just said, collaborate with other people that are just landscapers and hate doing water features.
Yep.
Or pools or whatever. And it allows you to open up another whole channel of marketing and getting jobs, because instead of marketing to the consumer, you can be like making those relationships with those contractors, and they feed you work, you feed them work. And it can actually help you really boost your revenues without a whole lot of spend or clawing and scratching on marketing.
Yeah, and I think, one of the biggest kind of holdbacks is, when you do that, you are taking a chance, like,
yeah, you are. Yeah.
So-and-so, if they have to trust that especially in my current situation where we've already done high-end hardscape jobs, we already have all the equipment, we already have all this stuff. They have to trust, like, if I'm gonna throw him this pool job, we have to make sure he's not gonna try to pull that out from under our rug for a revenue stream. And the contractors we've teamed up with, we do it a lot cleaner, I think, than most, and it's a business model that most wouldn't agree with, but we don't make any money on them. They don't make any money on our pool. We don't make any money on their hardscapes. We are working directly with the homeowner on the pool side of things. Obviously, design and stuff, we're still working with that hardscape contractor, but then they're paying the hardscaper directly. So rather than have to bicker or go back and forth about profit margins, or, well, if we're gonna give you this pool, you need to drop that 3% so that we can make 3% on it because we're feeding you this. We've just kind of had it's more or less a gentleman's agreement, and it's worked out so far that you work with the homeowner on your project, I'll work the homeowner on our project. In my situation, that's a lot easier to do because I'm an owner-operator. When you get into these bigger companies with more people, more legs to them, I think that's a little more difficult to do versus just managing the whole project. But it's worked out for us so far, and that's kind of the way we're gonna progress with it. We haven't done grass seed in years. We already don't. I
don't think there's a hardscape contractor that would ever cry about that.
Oh my gosh, that was one thing. We used to hydro seed, so we actually used to be a hydro seeding company, and I used to tell all my customers, I've never had an irrigated lawn fail. So what's that tell you? Customers without irrigation don't water their lawns enough.
That's right.
And I finally pulled the plug. We've maybe done 1 or 2 in the last 3 years that they insist on us seeding it. And you'll laugh, but I tell them once the bag of seed is open, it's no longer guaranteed. Like that, and that's all I can give you. That's all I can give you. So it is tough. To step out of the pretty side of the pool world. Yeah,
I'm just sitting here listening to you, and that's what I'm thinking of. Like, could I give that up? Because man, that's a pretty sweet reward. The feather in your hat, like you were saying, to stand back and look at the beauty of the finished project. It's the ribbons on top, and Instagram loves it, and like. To be leaving the job site with a concrete collar pulled around a pool, that's a different animal.
Yeah, you're not the finished carpenter. The framer never gets credit for building a house.
Right.
The drywaller doesn't really get credit.
Yeah.
The trim guy, he gets credit.
Yeah.
The flooring guy, he gets credit. So you really are backing out of it, but if it doesn't work for your model, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So what has been the most difficult thing you've encountered in your business journey?
Probably at the beginning. When I was 20 and I started, I worked 3 jobs for 5 years. So that was the most difficult part. Looking back on it, I don't know how I did it. I was a mowing and landscaping company. I worked for a local utility company, and then a local Anheuser-Busch distributor when I was in my early 20s. So I actually took the Anheuser-Busch job so that I could work 5 in the evening till 3 in the morning, go home, sleep from like 4 to 8, get up, go mow and landscape, and then Vance Outdoors, a huge local outdoor store. I sold guns and set up bows there on the weekends. So
no kidding.
I would go, all my vacation from those jobs I was doing big mulch jobs or big landscape jobs or hardscape jobs. And so, but it was one of those where, I grew up in a family of, if my dad said, if you want it, you'll figure out how to get it. No co-signers, no, I'm going to give you $20,000 to start up. I had to get a $2,000 loan to buy my first trailer. Like, I didn't have anything. On top of buying a house when I was 20, on top of having our oldest daughter when I was 22, and then our middle child when I was 24. So, plus wife went through nursing school, through all that. So like, and I look at that, and people look at what we have now, they didn't see that side.
Yeah, they never do.
And it's the sacrifice, and I don't ever usually talk about it, but I think you have to be willing to sacrifice. And
well, business is sacrifice.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it.
And if you're not willing, so many people want to complain that I don't make enough money at my job. Okay, well, when you get off at 5 o'clock, what do you do from 5 to 9? Because I had time from 5 to 9, so I went and got another job to get ahead. An old man told me once, you pay your bills from 9 to 5, you get ahead from 5 to 9. And when you're young and you don't have those family obligations, stay out of the riffraff and work. Just work. I'm not saying kill yourself to do it, but you have to be willing to give up the partying. You have to be willing to give up the running around. You have to be willing to give up your weekends to get ahead, especially if you don't have somebody funding you on the backside.
That's one of the, society, everybody has different opinions on, the state of society today, but like my wife's from Romania and I spent 2 years over there, and I never thought about it much till I got back from there, but the sheer fact that you can work your way to success in America is amazing.
Yeah.
Because like over there, you could work all you wanted. I mean, there was the government and their position to small business and all of that. Like it's just 10 times harder to get ahead.
Yeah.
And the cost of entry to get into a business, and if you got the work ethic and the commitment and the dedication, I mean, you will be successful given enough of time.
Yeah, and that goes to, my kids have always been raised. Are they spoiled? Yeah. I mean, they're way more spoiled than they should be. They're not as spoiled as their friends, but
definitely not as spoiled as you were when you were little, right?
Oh yeah. I give them crap all the time. Like, it must be rough with nothing to do with a $200,000 backyard.
Yeah, right.
Like, I know you have nothing to do, but
that's awful.
But yeah. And so, but my kids know winning and losing. They know success and failure, and that is one thing that I will not stray from. I will not stray from. There are winners and there are losers, period. And my wife struggled with that. And my daughters play travel softball, and everybody has their opinions on that. I leave it up to them. It's always their opinion to do any activity they want, but they have to do something. And I had my 7-year-old came home at one point this year, struck out a couple times, and got the game ball. And I said, well, you might as well just throw that in the dog's toy box. I said, because you don't strike out twice and get the game ball. And my wife was like, stop. And I said, no. I said, she needs to understand you don't get rewarded for failure. And she said, Dad, you need to, I forget how she said it, but she said, it's all about having fun. And I really, this is gonna sound terrible, but I have a problem with that. Because winning is fun, succeeding is fun, failure's not, and we're in a society where we've tried to allow people to believe that failing and losing is fun.
It's okay.
And everything's gonna be okay. But the thing is, if you can raise your kids, in my opinion, in today's society, we got 1-year-old, 7-year-old, 9-year-old. If I can raise them to be tough, understand hard work pays off, understand what winning and losing is, and losing is not as fun as winning, when they graduate high school, they will be better than nearly everyone they know. They'll be farther ahead in life. End of story, no way around
will be
it.
a huge advantage.
Yeah, you're giving them an advantage, and it's tough right now.
It's hard to do as a parent.
Yeah, my 9-year-old, she, the last term of the year, we were playing some really elite teams, and I got up to the car and she was crying, and I said, what's up? And she had a bad day, at the plate. She just didn't perform. She said, I sucked at softball today. And I said, yeah, you did. But tomorrow, you can fix it. And I shut the door, and her and her mom went home, and I went down to the field and finished cleaning up. That's huge. Like let a kid feel it. Let a kid see it. Let a kid understand it. You can try to force feed them all you want. It ain't gonna work.
You gotta experience it.
And I think that's what makes a good business owner. I think that's what makes a good from laborer on up through, is someone that understands and wants to win. Win at life. You know, sports, I think sports have a big thing to do with life.
Yeah, they teach you a lot of those lessons.
Yeah, and I was a big baseball player. Baseball, softball is a game of failure. You know, you succeed 3 out of 10 times, you go in the Hall of Fame. You know,
yeah, it's crazy.
That's wild to think.
Yeah.
But you know, whether it's football, golf, I don't care what it is. If you have a competitiveness in you and you're kind of taught that from a young age, I think that it makes for a better human long term. And the U.S. is competitive. You know, just like you said, it's harder to succeed or to grow or to have a business, you know, in another country. If you don't know how to fail and overcome that in the U.S., you're not going to succeed here
Yeah.
yet.
So another question I wanted to ask you is what's been the most beneficial, pivotal, or the best thing that you've done in your business journey? Like, what's the thing that, if you're like, this made a big difference for me, if you're just getting started or whatever, this is what I would tell you to take a look at and focus on?
I think in my personal journey, if I look at it from a personal perspective, my wife has been, and I'm not just saying that because it's on the podcast, but like, she never questions anything. You know, we bought that new excavator yesterday. At the end of the day, she's like, how'd your day go? I said, I bought you an excavator. and you know, she doesn't question my decisions. She supports them. She's not rah-rah, like, go Steve, like, but, you know, I would say from a personal standpoint, it's that. From a business standpoint, it's getting backed against a wall. You know, when I was in my mid-20s, had 2 kids in 2 years, put a wife through nursing school, worked 3 jobs, came out at the end with $20,000 in credit card debt, you know, with no income to really show for it. And, you know, you're backed against a wall. Actually, that same spring, I quit my full-time job because she got on as a nurse. I had $57,000 in commercial mulch jobs lined up to start my year. They called me and canceled the contract. You know what I mean? So it was like hit after hit after hit. Didn't have a choice. You just got to go. You just got to go. You got to figure out cold calling. I've still got my notebooks of 4 pages, every line of a condo association, hospitals, doctor's offices, calling all of them. You know, you may sit down and make 100 phone calls and get one that wants you to come even give it a quote. I think that was probably the big turnover for me in probably my mid-20s. 5 years ago when I started into the pools, the big turnover for me was when people started seeing your work and buying into it and having the faith in you, like to give you that big deposit check to go with it. So, I mean, I would say, you know, I kind of went in stages. Had I not met my wife when I was 20, I mean, I truly believe, you know, I probably wouldn't have a family right now. You know, I probably would have worked myself dang near in the ground by now. But I think that, you know, I think it's hard to put it on one moment, but
I resonate with what you're saying because I had a little bit of the same experience. Like I already said, I went over to Romania for 2 years, and the reason I was there for so long was not because that was like vacation and break for 2 years. It was like I got married to my wife over there, and immigration took so long.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to leave, come home without her. But I basically walked off that plane when we finally did get back to the States. I got off that plane with less than $20 in my pocket, and and I owed my dad $40,000. I had built a cabin over there, and you know, and that lit a fire in me that never really went out.
Yeah.
You know, like the back against the wall thing, like it was just like, you know, we got home, I shook out 2 quart jars of quarters and nickels and whatnot, and it was enough to fill up my tank of gas on my truck and get a week's worth of groceries and back to work.
Yeah.
And it never, like I did whatever it took. Like
Yep.
there, 90-hour work weeks if I had to. Like,
Yep.
and that, I don't know. There's just something that happens when your back's against the wall. For me, it's something that lit up that never really stopped. Now I'm getting into the time of life with, Chase is 7, and I'm trying to learn how to temper it a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
just, hang on a sec. You get one crack at this life.
Yep.
So, but I can resonate with what you're saying. I think to some degree or another, most business owners have that moment somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have a ton of little moments.
Yeah.
But I would say those are the 2 or 3 that really was like, and I think I just saw it on one of your clips last week. The guy mentioned getting comfortable. You'll sell 3, 4, 5 months of work, and then you're like, I don't need to call anybody back. Mm-hmm. And then, those moments remind you this can disappear.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to go through those moments and understand, we have to keep chipping away. We have to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And so, but I think you can't give up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not always the.
You guys are back.
I think you just realized he threw it in reverse right there.
Well, another question I want to ask you is, what is the best advice you've been given that you've actually put into practice?
Probably. Man, that's a good one. The best advice from a business standpoint is probably, man, there's a bunch of them. There's so many.
Yeah.
So one of my big things, and I struggle with it from time to time when you meet a difficult customer, is, do what you have to do to make the customer happy in the end. Even if they're wrong, even if you have to eat some cost. Obviously you have to draw a line on that at some point, but there's been, we probably run into a half a dozen times a year where there was a misunderstanding maybe with the contract, with the final grade, or with, little odds and ends things, with maybe a foot of concrete here or there. And I just default to, it's cool, we'll take care of it. And that has alleviated a lot. That cuts down on the conversations of fighting, arguing, and of leaving a bad taste in their mouth. It's at the end, and you're going to have it happen in this industry. But I would say, I'm not a big fan of the customer is always right thing, because I think you need to stand your ground most of the time. But it doesn't hurt, like we talked about, to let the customer win once in a while.
Yeah, even when you eat costs, like I appreciate that, because I watched Steve at Tusky Landscaping run his business that way, and he would, lose money to keep the customer happy if he had to.
Yep.
And that, I don't know, there's something that just changes in the energy when the customer realizes that, all that we want is for you to be happy. We're not going to fight and bicker and claim this was in the contract. I mean, everybody has different takes on this, and so I'm not saying what I'm saying is the only way to look at it, but there's a vibe and an energy that changes between you and the customer when they really do want me to be satisfied. Okay.
Yeah.
And they start being reasonable.
Yeah.
Yep. Whereas if you aren't reasonable, or you just kind of hold then they'll try to take you for as far as they can go.
I mean, and we just went through this on a project with a guy. A couple change orders, a couple things happened. We ended up having a pool heater that needed swapped out on a brand new pool. It was just damaged from shipping, so it kind of drug out a couple days, couple weeks. Got that swapped out for him as soon as it came in. Well, at this point, his arborvitaes that we had just planted a month ago were starting to brown up. Well, he says he watered them. I'm not here to argue it.
A little bit like your lawn story.
Yeah, I'm not here to argue it. It is what it is. But I immediately said, there was almost $24,000 outstanding on, and he was willing to hold that until he found out if the arborvitaes were going to come back. So instead, I said, you can have the arborvitaes for free. If they don't survive, you can hire somebody to replace them. $1,800 in arbs, whatever. He sent the final payment, you move on. Is that a good business model to run by? No, but when it comes down to
when you're
it,
looking at the balance sheet.
yeah, when you're looking at the balance sheet and you want to get this off the books, yeah, that is a good way to do it.
Which is, you need the accountants, but you probably don't want to make every single business decision by an accountant's perspective.
No. and like I've said, when you're doing six-figure projects, you surely should have some fudge factor in there. Just a little bit from experience. I mean,
which goes back to what you were saying. I can't remember if it was on the podcast or not anymore, but we were talking earlier. You were saying how you want to start with having enough of margin in there to be able to go the extra mile.
Yep.
You don't want to start right at your bottom nickel.
Yeah.
So that the moment an issue comes up, your back's against the wall on what you can do for the customer without actually losing money, and
Yep.
it just kind of spirals out of control from there.
Yeah, and it only takes one bad customer out of 10 to ruin 4 months out of the year. It only takes. And so what is it really worth to you? Mm-hmm. Is it worth that $1,800 to argue with them about how they were watering it? Because he doesn't have proof, I don't have proof that he wasn't.
Yeah. And are you going to call him out on it?
Yeah. And so you just, at a certain point, you call it a day, and you give them recommendations for when they need replaced. Mm-hmm. It costs you no money. Mm-hmm. The first run didn't cost you any money if they don't come back. Mm-hmm. If half of them come back, they still didn't cost you any money. Mm-hmm. But we're moving on.
It's just a great way to kill the issue. And sometimes we want to prove that we're right instead of just be the most kill them with kindness.
Yeah. Egos.
Yeah.
Egos.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the big things. Like me. I mean, I'm 6'3", 250 pounds, and like I'll be the first one to get out of Dodge. I'm not a big fighter, arguer. I just want to live my life, do my business, and fly under the radar.
Yeah.
So many guys, their ego gets caught up in it.
Yeah.
You can't. You cannot let your ego make your decisions. You can't let your emotions make your decisions.
And there we go. Now we got the advice.
Yeah. I guess that would probably be the biggest thing. And like we talked about. I remember being 18 years old, wanting to buy a new truck. Bank looked at me and said, you have to have a cosigner. Dad said, if you need a cosigner, you don't need it. And it's not that they couldn't afford it, it's that you're gonna learn a lesson. When I was 16, playing 90 to 100 baseball games a year, traveling the country, he handed me truck keys, insurance bill, a cell phone bill, you know what I mean?
So he's handed you the bill with the thing. Interesting.
And you're going to go get a job. And I washed cars over here at the local Dodge dealership for 2.5 years.
There you go.
Wouldn't go to Friday night football games until halftime because you got in free after halftime. Yep. So I would go wash cars until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night when they closed, and then go to the football game.
That's funny.
Yep. but it's, and I think that's something that everybody who's out there that has young kids, keep that in mind. Those are good lessons. I hated my dad at the time for it. I despised him. Why wouldn't you do for me what these other guys are doing? Well, I'm a lot further ahead now than those guys are.
Yeah, look at that.
Yep.
Exactly. So what you hate when you're a teenager or whatever, kid or whatever, ends up being your best advantage.
Yes, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. Dad, he kicked me out when I was 20. That's why I bought my house. And he was like, you're done. You got a good job. It's time. Forced me into buying this house. Best thing that ever happened to me.
That's amazing.
Best thing that ever happened to me.
That is truly amazing.
So it's that, don't hold it against your parents, anything from I would say 14 to 25, 24. That was probably a pivotal moment in my life, was being held accountable.
Just a responsibility.
Yep.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, you've been using SynkedUP for how long?
About a year and, it'd be a year and a half now.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember, I still remember the day that you signed up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what brought you to SynkedUP? Why did you come over? What were you looking for, and what did SynkedUP answer for you?
So I think my biggest thing was my prior software. I'm not a big computer guy, so everything was on paper and just kind of chicken scratch. And my previous software that I was paying good money for, I never had the setup right. I never had anything really fine-tuned. And then when I heard about SynkedUP, talked to Jeremy, and heard about the onboarding process and like how there's a lot of assistance there and getting you over that first hump. That was my biggest thing. That and an app that functioned. I mean, that was huge, because when you're in the field and you may not have that paper contract with you and the client says, I thought we had 600 square feet of pavers.
Yeah.
You know, you pull that up, go, oh, you're right, or no, see here, this is how it works. So then you can go in and do your change order or however you need to configure that. You know, that was a big thing for me, but you know, like I said earlier, Fred, you know, with the onboarding process, that was the ticket for me. And I even admitted, you know, I'm guilty of not implementing it to its full potential, but what I did implement it on made it night and day. You know, and you have to trust it. You have to learn to trust it. You have to reach out to these guys. You have to use what's available. Use your resources. You know, when you're installing a paver job and maybe there's a spec that you don't understand, you reach out to your resources to find out, you know, what is that tread depth? What is this? What is that? You should do that with your software too. And you guys have always been readily available, whether you do the online, you know, the chat box works great, anything like that. And I think once I really, I don't want to say bought into the process, but once I said, this is what we're going to do, because number one, there's no better option out there. I don't care what anybody says. And there's nothing that SynkedUp doesn't do at this point that I wish it did. You know, when you build it out truthfully, like we talked about, you know, you maybe be prepared to find out you've been losing money when you start accounting for everything. Swallow your pride, fix it now. You know, if you're going to sign up for SynkedUp and you're not prepared to change your margins, your system, it's probably not the best option for you. But if you're in the business game for long term, understanding year to year, planning out years ahead, you know, you're capable of that. If this is where you want to be in 2, 3, 4 years, you can go ahead and start pre-planning that budget, start factoring in that new equipment to that future budget, start building up for that. But if you're not willing to sit down, communicate with, and I don't care what software it is, it's not just SynkedUp, but if you're going to sign up for a software that you're paying money for and you're not going to use the resources, it's never going to be a cost-effective option for you.
Yeah, that's right. It's only as good as you use it.
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, and building templates. I mean, like you saw me in there, you know, I can build out a quote in 2 minutes.
That was amazing.
And
literally, we were in there at his office, at his computer. You went from new client, new quote, everything in there for a 6-figure pool project sent in yeah, you said 2-3 minutes.
2-3 minutes.
That was pretty awesome.
Now, did it take, you know, of the accumulative of probably 6 months of building quotes on it and realizing, oh, I'm forgetting this line item, oh, I'm forgetting
to really
this
get that template dialed,
Yeah, it probably took 6 months of maybe a couple minutes a week of just catching little things here and there. But for the time you save and to go look at a customer and be confident, you know, I can be standing on site with a new client, pull up the app, they'll say, hey, you know, we want this pool with this. And I can say, okay, well, I just quoted this one last week. This is what it came out to. Similar backyard setup, similar area, so township, you know, the permits, the cities, everything's gonna be similar. You're right there. You're not a week out. You're not 2 weeks out. You're not anything like that. You can get a baseline and really figure it out from there. You know, one thing Derek was also big in that respect for me was when we were talking about his sales process and how, you know, his one of his big goals is, you know, second meeting is sign. You know, that second meeting, that presentation meeting, that's
getting the signature.
Getting the signature, getting the deposit, moving on. You know, moving on to the next, as a salesman, moving on to the next thing and getting that put in the pipeline for someone else to take over. You know, not having 4, 5, 6 meetings.
Derek's good at that. Derek's good at that. He's always in like, how can I get you to what you want, deposit signed, in as efficiently as possible.
Yep.
Like this drug out sales process, I mean, it doesn't really serve anybody.
No, when you drag it out, you start finding out that they're going to call other companies. Like,
Right, yeah.
I
I mean, and details kill deals.
yes.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I don't know. Some people will tell me like, oh, my quotes look professional, and clients really comment on it. They really appreciate when I have all these details all spelled out, and I nod my head and I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I do know that details kill deals.
Yep.
Like, they look at you as the expert. They look at you as the one to have the answers. They trust you to have that. You need to earn their trust so they can trust you that they're going to get, an awesome outcome. And the rest is like, do you want to work with me?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
either you do or you don't.
And honestly, once you start getting into those bigger jobs, those more detail-oriented jobs, half the battle is either getting them in your office or getting a meeting with them. Or if they want references, things like that. You present all that to them, but I would say 50% of the time that we deal with a new client, they're already most of the way there. They've already done their research. They already know someone or saw us working in a neighborhood. So a lot of times it's yours to lose at that point. Or maybe it just comes down to strict budget. I'm a huge budget guy. It took me years to get the confidence to be like,
What is your budget?
what is your budget?
Yeah.
And I was like, we don't have one. And so, it's like, well, this one was, $272,000 for the whole backyard. And they're like, oh, we were thinking like 60. Okay. So we do have a budget.
Yeah.
We're getting back there. And, I'm not that stern about it anymore, but I try to tell people, and, a lot of the young guys, use this. I explain it as, we always ask the client, all of our clients, what is your budget? And the reason we ask is because once you tell me a number, I can show you projects that fall within that budget, and you can say, I like that, or I don't like that, or you can say, but this picture, how much was this project? You just got to get the conversation moving.
Yeah.
I've even went as far to say, when we go buy new equipment, we walk into that dealership with a budget. We want to spend $85,000 on an excavator. We want to spend $100,000 on a truck. We operate within a budget. I operate within a budget at my house. Everyone operates within a budget, and it's kind of gotten this kind of demeaning
It feels like they're
vibe.
like they're showing their cards or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're a homeowner, it's like if you give the contractor your budget, they can maximize your outcome for that dollar amount.
Yep.
If they got to guess,
Yeah.
then it's like, well, now I came in 20 grand over. And now you're asking me, can I take this out? Can I take that out? And like, actually, if I'd have known your budget was 20 grand less, I would have maybe had a completely different design or a completely different approach to the job.
And we are, for the most part, I would say 9 out of 10, we won't quote without a budget.
Yeah.
Like we kind of drew the
That's
line.
kind of a qualifying or a vetting. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm guilty. Like we don't charge for consultations at this point.
Well,
our area doesn't.
See, here's the thing though with that whole consultation fee thing. I actually wrote a whole blog on it on the on the website because it keeps coming up. But like, it is not about the money.
Yeah.
It's you're even if you're charging $500 for a consult, you might be covering your cost of all the time invested.
Yeah. You're not.
It's not about that.
Nope.
I don't care. What it is. The North Star about that principle is filtering, qualifying, vetting your leads.
Yes.
It's about, are you serious? Do you want to work with me? And if you are successful at getting qualified, vetted leads, and you're not charging a consultation fee, feel no pressure to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever your process is, whatever your jam is, whatever your flow is with your clients, and you're not struggling with giving out quotes and 8 out of 10 are coming back to you rejected, then, why would you?
Yeah. Yep.
You're already talking to the right people.
And with our website company, I argued with them for months at the time. This is what I want my contact us now or get a quote now form to be. And I said, and there's going to be a drop down with budgets. 25 to 50, 50 to 75.
They didn't
and
like
they're like, no. And I'm like, no, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Because at first we did it as just you could enter an amount.
Yeah.
Well, then you get people putting $1 or 0.01.
Just gaming the system.
Yeah, so then we just kept getting it to the point where I think now it's like 100 to 150 and then 150 plus is as high as it goes. And they were like, that is going to turn away so many people.
You're
and
like,
I'm
that's the point.
That's what I'm trying to do.
That's
I said,
the point.
you guys are used to
See,
working.
that's an example of getting the exact same outcome as charging a consultation fee in a different way.
Yeah, yep. And so many of my customers are sometimes even quoted without me leaving that office. Like, if this looks good to you, we'll come look at the site. I can tell you, depending on the site layout, stuff like that, 3 to 5%, could be different, could be easier, could be harder, stuff like that. But we're going to spit this out, get it to you, and you're going to let me know that looks good, let's move forward, or man, Steve, we really weren't looking to spend 80, we were looking to spend 60. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, we can take it down you can finance the project, or you can always put a deposit now, we can install the project late next year when you do save up there's options. But if you don't find that budget, I just feel like the deal's just not even going to move forward.
Yeah.
Now, there are those one-off opportunities. We did a $170,000 job out at the lake last year. Back when I was starting my company, this guy had his driveway settled. Called me and said he wanted a drain put in, something to take care of this low spot in his driveway where it cracked. Blew him off because I'm like, I don't want to do this. Blew him off. Finally, he called me and he's like, just come out and look at it. So I went out, I took like a little 12-inch trench drain, put it in the side of his driveway, dug it in to drain down towards the lake, took a grinder wheel and shaved his driveway down to create a trough. So every time it rained, it would drop right into that trench drain and gone. Charged $1,200 for that. Looking back, made zero money. Yeah. No way. Didn't make a dime. Calls me 2 years ago. We put in a $175,000 pool job for him. So when you're starting out, if you do get into these nice neighborhoods and these nice areas, do a good job, even though it's a small scale project, because you have a future.
That's how you get your name out there. You don't get to multi-six-figure jobs overnight.
Yeah.
Or, I guess you can, but I think it's probably a little bit safer and a little more prudent to, get up to 50, then up to 75, then up to 100, 150. Don't go from 20 to 200.
No. No, not unless you have a really good mentor.
Exactly. That is how you could do it, is with a really good mentor. But just going blindly, it's risky stuff.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It is not worth it because it can take in 1 year you can destroy what took you 10 years to build.
Well, Steve, thanks a million for making time, and
absolutely.
I just want to say thanks for you're putting your trust and faith in us at SynkedUP for your business. It means a lot to us, and we don't take that lightly. And I'm looking forward to hanging out with you and whoever else you're bringing out in September in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Turnell. Got to get Turnell.
Yeah,
out
right. There you go. Call them out on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
It's been awesome.
Absolutely.
I really, really enjoyed this.